The Trump-Putin meeting ended with the two leaders joking. The US president said he and Putin would meet again soon, while Putin said in English that the next time would be in Moscow. There were no questions after the meeting.
Question.
After the press conference, Putin left a pea on the grave of Soviet pilots in Alaska. Putin then boarded the presidential plane and left Alaska. After Putin, US President Trump also left Alaska on Air Force One. You are watching.
Sir, we will now evaluate this historic Trump-Putin summit, the Alaska Summit, with our guests. Professor Dr. Phyllis Katman from Istanbul Aydın University is with us. Ms. Phyllis, welcome. Hello, I wish you a good broadcast. Welcome, thank you. And Hacı Bayram University faculty member, Associate Professor Dr. Levent Ershim Oral is with us. Mr. Levent, welcome to you as well.
I would like to extend my regards to you, my esteemed Professor Phyllis, and our esteemed audience from Ankara.
Thank you very much. Yes, now we will talk about the Alaska Summit. Ms. Phyllis, let's start quickly with you. In fact, we are talking about a summit with many details from beginning to end. In particular, we have been talking for days that Putin and Trump were actually at odds, but when we looked at it, we also saw that there was a very sincere contact. Then, of course, there was a point where the parties, especially Donald Trump, said before the summit that Ukraine could make territorial concessions. Now, when we look at it, he said there are points that are agreed, there are points that are not agreed, but no clear statement was made from both sides. It was expected to last 7 hours. It lasted 3 hours. The parties made very short speeches. What is your first impression? I will leave the floor to you.
Of course, maybe I should say at the beginning what I will say later, to understand why the whole picture is in front of us in this way. In fact, we can say that the Yalta Summit, the first Yalta Summit, was a preliminary step to this second Yalta Summit, because the first Yalta Summit was the first Yalta Summit after World War II. It was a meeting of the leaders of Britain, the United States, and the Soviets. At the moment, the UK factor is in that picture, but not at the moment, but behind the scenes as the first provincial supporter of Ukraine. We saw the UK yesterday when this summit was being held. The decision to send extra forces to Ukraine and the decision to take a stronger presence there, we can say that this is the main reason why yesterday's process ended in this way. Because as long as there is no unity of discourse and action on the Ukrainian issue, it is not unilateral from both sides. Really, as it is written in the title, in the pursuit of peace, it is not possible to finally reach a long-term peace. It has become clear that it is not possible at the moment. Therefore, the British factor, a tripartite agreement on the British factor in Yalta won. Unfortunately, it seems that there will be such setbacks at this point as long as it is not.
In other words, when we look at the reality on the ground, we see that the UK is also involved at this point, since you are getting and compiling information from the field more clearly in the sectors.
Let's remember very clearly that peace was very close to peace in Istanbul, and Zelensky himself explained who removed Zelensky from the table.
Thank you, Filiz Hokam. For your first evaluation, of course, there are many things to talk about with fine points. Yes, Levent Hokam, let's continue with you. What was your first impression of this historic summit? I mean, Donald Trump actually said that he was waiting for a ceasefire. He said he would be sad and unhappy if it doesn't. When we look at the general atmosphere and mood, we actually see that there is tension again. Here are the short speeches, the short duration of the meeting. But both sides said that actually a constructive meeting was held and the door to a new process was opened. Let me leave the floor to you.
Yes, the door of diplomacy seemed to be closed. It is a great success that at least this door has been opened. I saw how happy Trump was from the welcome to the farewell because he managed to attract Putin to his country. Even though he is in Alaska, and Alaska has a historical significance, 100 years ago it was a land that belonged to Ruth
Almost at the
Charlton.
expense of the homeland.
It certainly is. It certainly is. A land that was bought with money, a land that Putin has lost, a land that Ruth Charlton has lost, as Putin says from time to time. It may not be right to dream of Ruth Charlton again, but it would be wrong to forget her. A leader who likes to refer to the great Russian Empire from time to time, who has a no-refusal attitude, who states that he will never compromise on his expansionist ideals. Now, the meeting of two expansionist, two imperialist leaders actually took place a little bit longer than expected. A period of 7 years. At some point, it turned into a Ronald Reagan-Gorbachev meeting. That's why Ms. Phyllis actually reminded us of the Yalta Conference. On the one hand, we were talking about the process of dividing Europe after the Second World War. But how sad it is that 80 years have passed. This time, we are not talking about the process of dividing Europe, but a country. In a sense, both states were imperialist at the beginning of this meeting. Both states did not give up their expansionist ideals. Let's divide Germany when the time comes. Let's call one East Germany and the other West Germany. Now let's divide Ukraine. On the one hand, let's talk about Luhansk, Donetsk, Crimea, or as Putin says, let's not talk at all. But what should we talk about for sure? Let's talk about the very rich minerals there. Let's talk about who will exploit them. What was the only thing that wasn't talked about, Ms. Stugan? There were innocent Ukrainians. There were Ukrainian children. There were Ukrainian civilians. Hodja,
of course,
these minerals.
the U.S. will also want to make an interest in these minerals.
Yes, it's a pity that they think of this as a spoil of war, because there is a war, but there is no side to the war. There is no Ukraine on the table. Is it possible to talk about the division of Ukrainian territory? Can we talk about who will exploit the rich minerals on Ukrainian territory? But let me look at the positive side, because Trump, wants a Nobel Peace Prize. The applause in these images is a reflection of his childish demeanor, both when he welcomes the applause and when he climbs the steps. But to some extent, if you ask me, they are the tiny little steps of the slogan that I am getting closer to the Nobel Peace Prize with every step. I find it positive. At least the door of dialogue has been opened. Some letters of the ceasefire were mentioned. Obviously, a prisoner exchange has been discussed, a hostage exchange, maybe an exchange of dead bodies. But the question is how much concessions will be made. One, was Ukraine's NATO membership discussed? We don't know. Two, was the withdrawal of Russian troops from each end discussed? We don't know. Three, did Putin say he would never compromise on Crimea? We don't know for now. I find it positive in terms of the formation of the second summit. This means that some processes are maturing step by step.
Well, Levent Hokum, I would like to ask you this. While you were talking about NATO, Donald Trump said that normally, if a positive meeting does not pass, I will not call any side. But now we see that the positive atmosphere has emerged to some extent. As you mentioned, a new door has opened, and he said he would call NATO. Then he said he would meet with Zelensky. Now, if we remember, Donald Trump stated before this summit that he would provide arms support to NATO and Ukraine. Now, what do you think will be discussed by calling NATO? In other words, was there any pressure on Ukraine regarding NATO?
Ms. Figan, before such big, giant summits, technical teams already take diplomatic steps somewhere down there. Distances are made and the ground for compromise is reached. Certainly, compromises have been reached on some topics that are not reflected to us for now, but we are sure. As of now, Putin has a demand. NATO should end its presence in Ukraine. And in the long run, I know that Ukraine will not join NATO. So let's not have a new Finland. Don't come to my door like Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, the Baltic states. And after this hour, Trump, yes, will put forward such a new fictional scenario on NATO and slowly try to get territorial concessions because it is an absolute victory. In other words, Putin will not have said, I will take all the occupied territories, I will not withdraw troops from here anymore, so we see positive, moderate steps. Moreover, Trump has declared that he will meet with Zelensky, so Putin has some demands. A common ground of consensus will be sought with Zelensky. Then I am waiting for that trilateral summit. I hope it will be in Istanbul. I hope we will also crown our efforts in a mediation activity, because I think Turkey also has a big share in the realization of this summit.